ספרד הכפישה את גיבורנו, את חיילי צה"ל, חיילי הצבא המוסרי ביותר בעולם.
Spain just did something almost no Western ally dared to do.
Es que no estamos ante el mismo escenario que en la guerra ilegal de Irak. Estamos en algo mucho peor.
It openly challenged both the United States and Israel.
Spain has been horrible, absolutely horrible.
Now Israel is going a step further and saying that they are anti-Israel.
Trump threatened to cut all trade with Spain.
And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly it and use it.
A Pentagon email floated kicking it out of NATO.
We had one laggard. It was Spain. Maybe you should throw them out of NATO, frankly.
Madrid didn't move.
Callar ante una guerra injusta e ilegal no es prudencia ni lealtad. Es un acto de cobardía y de complicidad.
The answer tells you something important about where Europe and the collective West is actually headed. Let's break it all down. Spain and its Prime Minister Sanchez is making a calculated bet on the international stage. He sees a world where the Old West consensus, back America, back Israel, trust institutions, is cracking. And he's positioning Spain not as a rogue actor, but as a leading voice of a different kind of Western foreign policy, one that centers international law, multilateral institutions, and what he calls moral consistency. The argument he's making goes something like this. If the West applies international law selectively, it destroys the credibility of the entire rule-based order it claims to defend. And once that credibility is gone, the West loses its most powerful tool, not military force, but moral authority. It's a serious argument, and it's one that's finding an audience, not just in Spain, but across the global South, across parts of Europe, and increasingly in the streets of the Western cities. Let's trace exactly what Spain has done and why it matters more than most Western commentary has acknowledged. When October 7th happened, Spain, like most of the West, condemned it. That's the baseline. What happened next is where Spain diverged. As Israeli military incursion in Gaza intensified through late 2023 and into 2024, most Western governments maintained a careful position. They fully supported Israel's military actions and avoided direct criticism of Israeli conduct. But Spain stepped off. Sanchez publicly described the civilian death toll in Gaza as intolerable, and officially, those brutal attacks he called as genocide. Spain joined Ireland and Norway in formally recognizing a Palestinian state in May 2024, a symbolic but significant move that drew immediate fury from Tel Aviv, which recalled its ambassador. Spain pushed within the EU for an arms embargo on Israel. But here is what Spain understood that many of its critics didn't. The Gaza genocide wasn't just a regional crisis. It was a stress test for Western credibility, and Spain had decided loudly that the West was following it. Now let's shift to Iran, because Spain's position there is equally revealing and less covered. Washington's approach to Iran under Trump's second term doubled down on maximum pressure, sanctions, isolation, and ultimately military force. The diplomatic track failed in direct US-Iran negotiations in early 2026, mediated by Oman, produced no argument. The United States and Israel calculated they had greater opportunity to advance their objectives through military means than through diplomacy. On February 28th, they acted on that calculation. The US and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran, assassinating Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and several other senior officials. A surprise attack launched in the middle of ongoing negotiations. Iran responded with missiles and drone strikes across the region, and then it did something that sent shockwaves through the entire global economy. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz had previously carried roughly a quarter of the world's seaborne oil trade and around a fifth of its liquefied natural gas. Its closure became the largest disruption to world's energy supply since the 1970s oil crisis. Brent crude surpassed $100 per barrel within days and peaked at $126. Europe was hit almost immediately, and it was hit hard. Spain had seen this coming, not the war itself, but the logic that made it inevitable. When the strikes began, the Spanish government condemned the US and Israeli airstrikes as violations of international law and denied US forces permission to use the jointly operated military bases at Rota and Moron for operations against Iran. Washington's response was swift. Trump threatened to sever all trade ties with Spain. An internal Pentagon email outlined options to punish NATO allies perceived as insufficiently supportive, including the possibility of suspending Spain from the alliance entirely. So let's ask the harder question. Why Spain specifically? Other European nations share some of these views privately. Why is Madrid the one saying it out loud? Several reasons, and they stack. One is the history. Spain has a complicated, intimate relationship with empire, colonialism, and the experience of being one of the receiving end of great power politics. That history shaped how Spanish political culture, particularly on the left, reads conflicts between powerful states and stateless people. Number two is geography and migration. Spain sits at the intersection of Europe, the Mediterranean, and Africa. It manages one of the EU's most active migration routes. Instability in the Middle East and North Africa lands on Spain's shores. Spanish foreign policy isn't just ideological, it's practical. A burning Middle East creates pressure that reached Melilla and the Canary Islands long before they reached Berlin or Warsaw. And number three, the Global South calculation. Spain has deep cultural, linguistic, and economic ties to Latin America, a region that has largely sided with calls for a ceasefire and Palestinian statehood. Sanchez is not just speaking to European audiences. He's speaking to a global constituency that the traditional Western foreign policy establishment has largely stopped listening to. Put those three together and Spain's position stops looking like moral grandstanding and starts looking like a coherent strategic bet on where the world is actually going. Here's the bigger story that Spain's position is pointing to, and it's one that will define Western foreign policy for years to come. The Western alliance was built on a set of shared assumptions: liberal democracy, rule-based international order, American leadership, and the idea that the West speaks with something approaching a unified moral voice. Gaza cracked that. Because of genocide, broadcasting in real time on every platform made the West's selective application of international law impossible to ignore for a new generation of citizens, politicians, and governments. Spain is not a superpower. It doesn't have the military weight of the United States, the economic mass of Germany, or the permanent Security Council seat of France and UK. What it has is a voice. And right now, it's using that voice to say something the Western establishment finds deeply uncomfortable. That moral consistency isn't optional if you want moral authority. That you cannot champion international law when it's convenient and ignore it when it's not. And that the rules-based order is only as strong as the willingness of its members to actually follow the rules. Whether Spain is right or wrong, that argument isn't going away, and neither is the fracture it's exposing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.